Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
And today we are here to bring you another pre-con deep dive. In this video, we're going to break down all the cards that are in this deck, talk about what the deck is meant to do, how to use it wisely, and if you wait until the end, we will offer you some tweaks and suggestions that might make the deck even better. So this is the very exciting one for Shauna because she is the vampire queen and she's going to tell you all about this deck's commander and what this deck is meant to do.
Yes, so this deck is called Blood Rites, and it is a very typical vampire deck, but it's got a bunch of new cards that are just coming out with the new Ixalan set. So yeah, you'll want to stick around with us and find out more about all these vamps and all the great old cards that are in here too. So we've got Clavel, oh my goodness. Claveleno. First of the Blessed. He is a 2/2 vampire cleric for 1, a white and a black. And whenever you attack, target attacking vampire that isn't a demon becomes a demon in addition to its other types. It gains when this creature dies, you draw a card and create a tapped 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. So this deck is kind of crazy. Vampires like to die anyways, but in this case, they get to become vampire demons, which is just crazy. And then we've got our secondary commander that came with this deck is Carmen, Cruel Sky Marcher. It's 2/2 for 5, and it has flying, which is nice to have vampires with flying. And whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, you put a 1/1 counter on Carmen, and you gain 1 life. And whenever Carmen attacks, return up to 1 target permanent card with mana value less than or equal to Carmen's power from the graveyard to the battlefield. So this is going to be a powerful deck, too, if you got a lot of that sacrifice stuff going on. We'll see how much is in this deck as we go through. And that might be something that you might want to tweak.
I believe there's like some good death triggers that happen in this deck as well, right? So
yes. Yeah.
That'll be great.
So, yeah, Leslie's going to give you a little bit of a breakdown of the cards in this deck.
That's me. So when we look at the mana curve, of course, vampires are very much low to the ground, very similar to merfolk. If you haven't seen our merfolk video, you can go and check that out on our thing as well. But we have 8 at 0 to 1 mana cost, which is really high for 0 to 1, 19 at 2 mana cost, and 13 at 3 mana cost. And then really we have only 11 at 4, 6 at 5, and 6 at 6+. So not all super small vampires, but a lot of really small vampires. So you can get them out quickly, take advantage of them while you can, and then when they die, it won't really matter. As far as color breakdown goes, this is a black-white deck, so we have 11 multicolor, 10 colorless, which is actually really high for a lot of commander decks that have come out. And then we have 11 white and 31 black. So it's very black heavy, this deck, and which is fine. It's black as Shauna's heart. Yeah, absolutely. Card types, we have 36 creatures. It is a creature deck. Sorceries and instants, we have 9, 6 enchantments, and 11 artifacts. We also have 1 planeswalker in this deck. So it's the only deck, I believe, that comes with a planeswalker.
Maybe, yeah.
So how are we going to break this down for them?
Okay. Well, in our videos, we like to go through a deck building formula. It's also the formula we use when we build our own decks. So it's something that Wizards seems to follow as well, kind of for the most part. So we evaluate all these precons based on that formula. So the formula calls for about 15 ramp cards, those mana generating cards, about 15 removal, 13 card draw, about 12 high impact, those are the game winning cards, and then about 10 or so of your supporting cards that help your win condition or help your theme overall, and then about 35 lands. So that's what we're going to evaluate this deck on, are those numbers.
Mm-hmm. And our first section is ramp and mana generators. Our formula calls for 15. This deck actually only has 8. But as we said, we have a lot of low to the ground stuff. So maybe that won't matter. Still, it's a little low. So you might want to increase that. But our first one is Master of the Dark Rites. It's a new card. It's a 1 mana cost 1/1, and you can tap it and sacrifice another creature to add 3 black. Spend this mana only to cast vampires, clerics, and or demon spells, which is everything in your deck. And we did talk about the fact that most of this deck is black, so it should be great to use those 3 mana for that. And this gives you a little way to sacrifice those things that you want to sacrifice, which we'll see why that's important a little bit later.
Yeah. And then this deck, like all the other ones, have Arcane Signet and Soul Ring, which are awesome to have. And the Arcane Signet is the new commander staple, newish commander staple that you tap for any mana in your commander's colors. And Soul Ring, of course, taps for 2 colorless for only 1. So you want to see that in a commander deck for sure.
Yep. And then we have Commander Sphere and Mind Stone. Commander Sphere adds any color in your color identity, and Mind Stone adds colorless, but they also both sacrifice to draw cards. So a couple mana rocks that will also draw you cards.
Yeah. Then we've got the Orzhov Signet. Of course, you want the signets in the multicolored deck. So this is black and white, and that's what the Orzhov Signet taps for. Talisman
of Hierarchy will tap for colorless, but it will also tap for either a white or a black if you let it deal 1 damage to you. But this deck, it doesn't matter because you're going to be gaining life. You're fine.
And we've got Wayfarer's Bauble, which is great to have in these decks. And you can sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land card and put that land onto the battlefield tapped.
And that's it. Now we're on to card draw and tutors. Also kind of lacking in this deck. Formula calls for 13. This deck only has 9. So what do we got first? We have Blood Tracker for 4. It's a 2/2. It has flying. You can pay 1 and 2 life, and you can put a 1/1 counter on him. When he leaves the battlefield, you get to draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. So nice way to draw cards later on, but you do have to pump him up and lose some life to do it.
Yeah, and Champion of Dusk is similar idea. You have to pay life to draw cards. So it's a 4/4 for 5. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of vampires you control.
Ooh, risky.
Could be bad.
But probably fine. Crossway Troublemaker for 6 is a 5/5. Attacking vampires you control have Death Touch and Lifelink. See, it doesn't matter. You got Lifelink. And whenever a vampire you control dies, you may pay 2 life. And if you do, you draw a card. So gain some life to lose some life.
Yeah. That includes your little vampire tokens, which is nice. Then we've got the Dusk Legion Zealot. He's a great little card. Comes in the battlefield. Draw a card, lose a life. That's what I'm saying. Draw a card, lose life.
Draw a card, lose life. Viscera Seer for 1. It's a 1/1, and you can sacrifice a creature to scry. It's always good to look at the top card of your library and see what's coming. At that point, you can choose to put it on the bottom of your library or keep it on top if you like it.
Welcoming Vampire. This is one of my favorite vampire cards. This is for 2/3. It's a flying vampire that has whenever 1 or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card, and it only triggers once each turn, but it sure is good.
Pretty much every single turn you're going to get to. Pact of the Serpent for 3 is a sorcery. You can choose a creature type, vampire. Target player draws X cards and loses X life, where X is the number of creatures they control of the chosen type. However, you could also spin that around if you, for example, needed somebody to lose a whole bunch of life that won't gain it back, and they're playing merfolk or dinosaurs or pirates or one of the other tribal decks. You could choose merfolk, and then that person's going to draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of creatures they control. So you can choose them if you need.
Mean. Village Rites, it's a great little card, an instant that lets you, as additional cost to cast a spell, you sacrifice a creature. So that's a great one to play on the opponent's turn. You block with the creature first and then sacrifice it before it dies, and you can draw 2 cards.
Yep, instants are for combat. Heirloom Blade for 3. It is an equipment that has equipped creature gets +3/+1. And when a creature dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with it, and put that card into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. So nice way to just kind of search through your deck for another creature.
More vampires.
Yeah.
Then we're into our removal, and this formula calls for 15, and this deck has only about 11. So this deck is showing you so far that it's all about the synergy piece.
It's all about the vampire.
Yes. So Butcher of Malachor, it's a 5/4 flying for 5 and 2 black. So a little expensive, but whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this is really, really good removal. Your stuff dies, their stuff dies.
So, and this is a good, like, you have a lot of sacrifice this creature to do stuff. So this is going to be an ongoing removal for you.
Yep.
A new card, Charismatic Conqueror, for 2 is a 2/2 with Vigilance, and when an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you get to create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. So basically, every time someone plays a creature, you can just say, "Do you want to tap that?" And if they don't, you get a creature.
Get your tokens ready.
It's like Smothering Tithe with creatures.
Very annoying. Patron of the Vein, it is a 4/4 for 6. This is one of those vampire cards that you want to have in this deck for sure. It is a flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it and put a 1/1 counter on each vampire you control. So yeah, the creatures aren't going to the graveyard, which they want in some cases, and your vampires are getting bigger.
Yeah.
They're in trouble.
Vona, Butcher of Magan, is a 5 mana cost 4/4 with Vigilance and Lifelink, and you can pay 7 life to destroy target non-land permanent. You can only do that on your turn, but who needs life?
Awesome.
Who needs life?
And a Stir Command. This is a great sorcery that lets you choose 2. Destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures of mana value 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. Pick what you need.
And the next one is just damn. You're going to damn them.
Damn.
Or 2, destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. This also has Overload for 2 and 2 white, which means, I can't remember.
I think if you pay the extra, you get to do all replace a target with each.
Right, to all creatures.
Yeah.
Destroyed this way can't be Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's an additional cost.
Then there is New Blood. I love the art on this one. It's for 2 and 2 black. A sorcery that says as an additional cost to cast it. Tap and untap vampire you control. No problem. Gain control of target creature. Change the text of that creature by replacing all instances of creature type with vampire.
Nice.
I'm going to steal your creature and turn it into a vampire.
Oh, how on theme. That's so fun.
Yes.
Olivia's Wrath for 5 is a sorcery. Each non-vampire creature gets -X until the end of turn, where X is the number of vampires you control.
Oh, darn.
Board wipe for non-vampire creatures.
Return to Dust, handy dandy little instant for 2 and 2 white that exile target artifact or enchantment. And if you cast the spell during your main phase, you may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment.
Swords to Plowshares, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power.
Utter End, 2 and a white and a black. For an instant, this is exile target non-land permanent. Handy.
Yeah, good, awesome, regular staples that you'll see in a lot of commander decks there. So now we're on to our high impact cards. The formula calls for 12. We figure this deck has about 13, so that's decent. We're happy about that. So we're losing some of the removal card draw on ramp, but we're going to gain it in our synergy, our support. Our first high impact card though is a Planeswalker, Sorin, Lord of Innistrad for 4. He's a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. You can give him another loyalty and put a 1/1 black vampire creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. You can -2 him and take away 2 loyalty, and you get an emblem that says creatures you control get +1/+0. And your emblems can never go away and they can stack. And then -6 is destroy up to 3 target creatures and or other planeswalkers and return each card put into the graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. So now you're going to steal their things and turn them into vampires.
Blood Artist. It's a 0/1 for 2. It's a must include whenever it or another creature dies. Target player loses 1 life and you gain a life. This is how you're going to win the game. You want your stuff to die, so you drain their life.
Yeah. And Bloodline Necromancer is a 5 mana cost 3/2 with lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target vampire or wizard creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, which they will be trying to kill your creatures that do awesome things for you, so you will need this so that you can bring them back.
Yeah. And Carmen, we already told you about Carmen, but as you can see, it's high impact because you're going to sacrifice stuff and you're going to make her bigger and gain life and return permanents from your graveyard to the battlefield again and sacrifice them again. And it's just to get that whole thing going.
Cycle. And Cordial Vampire for 2 is a 1/1, and when it or another creature dies, you get to put a 1/1 counter on each vampire you control. So now your vampires are getting bigger when things die.
Cruel Celebrant. This is another vampire that says whenever it or another creature planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life.
Yeah. Stack those death triggers. Yep. Drana, Liberator of Malkir, is a 3 mana cost, 2/3 flying first strike vampire, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you get to put a 1/1 counter again on each attacking creature you control. So attack with lots, and they all get 1/1 counters with Drana.
Yeah, and she hits first, so they get the counters
before they hit.
Yeah, which is nice.
Thank you for reminding me.
Alenda, I always forget that. Alenda the Dusk Rose. This is the lovely vampire queen who has lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, it doesn't matter where, you get to put a 1/1 counter on her, and then when she dies, you turn those 1/1 counters into little vampires and bring her back again later. Why not?
Exactly. Falkenrath Noble, another staple vampire that you see in a lot of vampire decks, is a 4 mana cost 2/2. When it enters the battle or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is not all players, but just a target player. But again, you're gaining life, they're losing life. And this next one is awesome.
Yeah. Sanctum Seeker. So you're going to be swinging with all those vampires, and for every vampire, whenever a vampire even attacks, they lose a life and you gain a life.
Yes.
So it's pretty awesome.
And the nice thing about it being on the attack trigger is they could die before they could block.
Doesn't matter.
Which then means that your creatures don't die
because
they can't block.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's killed me with that so many times.
Yep.
Twilight Prophet for 4 is a 2/4 with flying. It does have Ascend. So if you control 10 or more permanents, then you get City's Blessing. That does include land, and that stays for the rest of the game. So what does that mean? At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have a City's Blessing, then you reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the converted mana cost of that card. So now they're losing life, you're gaining life, and you're getting card draw. So really going to do some work for you.
Card draw.
Plus, it's flying and 2/4, so it's a really good high impact card.
Yeah, I've killed people with it before.
Yeah.
Exquisite Blood. This is shocking that this is in this deck, but I'm so glad it is because I still didn't have a copy, so now I do. It is an enchantment for 5 that whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear, I'm so sorry.
Oh dear, just wait. Radiant Destiny for 3. It's Ascend. So again, it gives you City's Blessing if you have 10 cards. So the nice thing about this one is when it enters the battlefield, you're going to choose vampires, and then creatures you control of that type get +1/+1. And as long as you have the City's Blessing, they also have Vigilance, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Then we're on to the other cards on theme section, or cards that support your win condition. Or support that whole theme in general. So this deck, we usually have about 10, but this deck has 21. I don't know, maybe you could put them in some of the other places.
It's all in support.
They're just all supporting kinds of cards. They're not crazy on their own. They're just awesome as a group. So we've got Bartolome del Presidio. This is a Vampire Knight to 2/1, and you can sacrifice another creature or artifact to put a 1/1 counter on him. So that's a great way to make him bigger.
He's a new guy.
Sacrifice outlet. And he's a new card, yeah.
Bloodghast for 2 is a 2/1. gas can't block, so he's just going to be an attacker. He has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life, and it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return blood gas from your graveyard to the battlefield. So he's just going to keep coming back every single time you play a land, and with all of your lords, he's not just going to be a 2/1. He's going to be pretty big.
Dust Legion Sergeant. It's a 2/2 for 2 with menace, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice it. And what? No, sacrifice him, and each non-token vampire creature you control gets persist until end of turn. So persist is if they die, they come back with a -1 counter on them, but they come back.
So that's a way to save from a board wipe. Nice. Elenda Hierophant for 2 is a 1/1. This is another new card. She has flying. When you gain life, you get to put a 1/1 counter on her. So you're going to be gaining life a lot. And reminder that like each time your little 1/1 dude hits, so if you have 5 little 1/1 vampires with lifelink, each of those is gaining you life once. So you would do 5 in that case. When Elenda Hierophant dies, you create X11 vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is her power.
Then we have the Indulgent Aristocrat. It is a lifelinker, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice a creature and put a 1/1 counter on each vampire you control.
They're just going to keep getting bigger.
Yes.
Legion Lieutenant is just a nice little lord that gives a static 1/1 to all other vampires.
Martyr of Dusk. It's a great little vampire 2/1, and its whole point is to die. When it dies, create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink.
Yep.
Bring
Bring it back
again.
Death trigger, do it again.
Yep.
Mavrin Fane Dusk Apostle for 3 is a 2/2. When one or more non-token vampires you control attacks, you get to create a 1/1 vampire creature token with lifelink. So you're just going to keep creating little 1/1s when vampires attack and double those up.
Yeah, Nighthawk Scavenger. It's flying Death Touch lifelink. We like that. And its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards. Oh, that would add up in a commander game, wouldn't it?
Yes. And types are like artifact, instant, sorcery, creature, land, those types. Oathsworn Vampire for 2 is a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield tapped, and you may cast it from your graveyard if you gained life this turn. So again, this is another one that you're going to take advantage of the death trigger when it dies, and then you're going to bring it back when you gain life and just enter the battlefield. And yeah.
Another new card, Order of the Sacred Dusk. It is a vampire knight as well. 5/5 for 8. It has Convoke, though, so you can tap creatures to help pay for that cost. White creatures can help you pay for the white pip, and black creatures can help you pay for the black. And it has Flying, Lifelink, and Haste, which is awesome. And it has Exalted, so whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So, what? That's crazy. It's going to have +1 until end of turn. So it's attacking by itself. Oh, and other vampires you control have Exalted as well.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's nice.
Wow.
So whatever is big that you need to attack with, you attack
Just
by
attack
itself.
by itself.
Just give it +1/+1. Redemption Choir for 4 is a 3/3 with lifelink. This one has Coven. This is also a new card. And when Redemption Choir enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control 3 or more creatures with different power, return target permanent card with a mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Going back to our mana curve, we had a lot of 3 or less cards or creatures that are in this deck, so you'll be able to find something with no problem
Lands
at
count.
all. And lands count, yeah, because they don't have mana cost.
As long as you haven't played a land yet.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have Timothar, Baron of Bats. It's a 4/4 for 4 and 2 black. It has Ward, discard a card, so if they try to do anything, they have to discard a card. And whenever another non-token vampire you control dies, you may pay 1 and exile it. If you do, you create a black bat creature token with flying that gains when this creature deals combat damage to a player. Sacrifice it and return the exiled card to the battlefield tapped. So it just turns into a bat temporarily.
Just temporary. Yahenni Undying Partisan for 3. It's a 2/2. It has haste. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you get to put a 1/1 counter on him, sacrifice another creature, and he gains indestructible till the end of turn. So he is going to get bigger as your opponent's creatures die. And when you just sacrifice one of your own creatures, give it indestructible. So in a board wipe, you sacrifice a creature, he gets indestructible, and then he gets all the 1/1 counters for all the creatures that just died. So it might stop them from doing that board wipe, but you don't care if your vampires die because they're going to lose life.
Blade of the Blood Chief. Whenever a creature dies, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature. If equipped creature is a vampire, put 2 1/1 counters on it instead. So put that on your Henny and see what happens.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Glass Cast Heart for 3 is an artifact, and whenever sorry,
it's like Strahd's Heart.
Yes, exactly. Whenever one or more vampires you control attack, create a blood token. Then you can pay a black and tap and pay 1 life to create a 1/1 black vampire creature token with lifelink, or you can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice the heart and 13 blood tokens, and each opponent loses 13 life and you gain 13 life. So nice way to use those blood tokens if you're gaining them. Yeah.
And Swiftfoot Boots. This is a great card to have in here to put on any of your creatures that you want to protect. It makes them hexproof and have haste, which is nice too. So that's a good little card.
Yep. And Etchings of the Chosen is a 3 mana cost enchantment. As Etching of the Chosen enters the battlefield, you're going to choose vampires, and creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. So again, you're going to be buffing up your creatures, which is nice support. And then you can pay 1 and sacrifice a creature of the chosen type, and target creature you control gains indestructible to the end of turn. Now you're protecting some of those things that you need to protect and keep on the battlefield.
Yeah. Kindred Boon, it's for 2 and 2 white. As it enters the battlefield, choose vampires, and you can pay 2 and put a divinity counter on target creature you control of the chosen type, and each creature you control with a divinity counter is indestructible.
Oh, crazy. This has some really good cards to protect your
and you can do that as many times as you want.
Yeah. March of the Canonized. This one's a new one. It's X and white, 2 white for an enchantment. When March of the Canonized enters the battlefield, you create X/1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if your devotion to white and black is 7 or greater, you get to create a 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. So each upkeep, you might get to create a 4/3 black vampire demon.
Yeah. Promise of Ecclesotz. It's a adventure card, so you can play the sorcery side. It's called Foul Rebirth for 2 and a black. You can sacrifice a non-demon creature. If you do, you create a demon basically, and you demon creature. So yeah, demon creature with, that's the one that flies. And then the enchantment says at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a non-demon creature. If you do, populate. Populate means you get to make another copy of any token you have out.
Probably going to be the 4/3 black and white demon vampires. You with lifelink. Yeah. So as far as land goes, we recommend 34. This deck has 37. That's still very decent. Although with this mana curve being fairly low, there is some room to tweak that. There are some lands of note, however, in this deck that we think are pretty worth note. The Vault of the Archangel lets you create creatures you control gain death touch and lifelink until the end of turn. Voldaren Estates lets you create blood tokens and activate. Activation costs less for the number of vampires you control, or you can pay life to add different mana. The Windbrisk Heights allows you to exile cards without paying their mana cost if it attacked you, or if it attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn. Bajuka Bog gets rid of people's graveyards if they're playing things from their graveyard, like the pirate deck does. And then, of course, Rogue's Passage lets you swing in without being blocked. That is in all of our decks. So, yeah.
Then we've got a little graph that Leslie has made up that puts the deck comparison numbers with the actual formula. And as you can see, this deck is kind of everywhere compared to the formula, but it's very focused on that whole vampire theme, so less on the specifics for each of those categories, and more about the synergy. So that's the support. This is why it's so big. Some of those cards could be in those other places, I guess, but
for the most part, it's just on theme support.
Yeah.
And it will help, like it'll be good.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah.
So we do have some tweaks. Do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. So we have a new card, Amelia Benavides Aguirre. I'm probably destroying
a lot of Italian
names. Is it Italian? I was thinking it was Spanish, but I don't know. Maybe Spanish. It's Italian.
Yeah.
2/2 for 2. The Vampire Scout ward is pay 3 life, so they'd have to pay 3 life to do anything to her. Whenever you gain life, she explores. That's that. Look at the top card of your deck. If it's a land, put it in your hand. If it's not, you can choose to leave it there or put it in the graveyard. And this one gets a counter. Then destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. What?
Yeah. So it's a little build up board wipe. And you're gonna have possibly a 2020.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Animal on the Ruin Sage we thought would be a good one to add to this as well. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. So now they're going to have to make choices. It's just mean.
Bishop of Binding, it's a 1/1 for 4 vampire cleric. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until he leaves the battlefield. Whenever Bishop of Binding attacks, target vampire gets +X until end of turn, where X is the power of the exiled card.
Mm-hmm. And then Bloodletter of Aclezanto for 4, but 3 black and 1. We're losing our voices, people. Yes. It's a 2/4, but this one's a vampire demon, so it's very much on theme for what this deck does. It's flying, and if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead.
So mean. Bringer of the Last Gift for 6 and 2 black. It's a 6/6 flying vampire demon as well from the new set. And when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, each player sacrifices all other creatures they control. And then each player returns all creature cards from their graveyard that weren't put there this way to the battlefield.
It's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. You're just going to switch them out. Drana the Last Blood Chief for 5. It's a 4/4. And when she attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card from your graveyard and returns it to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter. So they get to choose something that you get back.
Mm-hmm. Haunt of Hightower. This is a 3/3 for 6, and it's vampire with flying and lifelink. Whenever it attacks, defending player has to discard a card. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a 1/1 counter on the haunt. Mm-hmm. So they're going to get punished for that.
They sure are. And then we thought putting Veto in here would be good. Thorn of the Dust Rose for 3. It's a 1/3. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And then you can pay 5, and creatures you control gain life or gain lifelink until the end of turn. So you're going to gain a whole bunch of life if you want to when things are swinging in. But there is, if you are unaware, it is worth noting that this could and is a infinite combo with Exquisite Blood, which says when an opponent loses life, you gain that much life, because essentially you're gaining life and they're losing life, and then when they lose life, you gain life, and it just continually goes until
they're dead.
Yeah, and you do one opponent, and then you do the next opponent. So if you have both of them on the battlefield and you manage to gain life, it is an infinite combo. So you can protect that. You can decide to use it. If you don't like infinite combos, or you don't like when people win that way, then don't put that in your deck.
Kind of silly. Then I love Edgar, the Charmed Groom. He's a great card to have in this deck because he just never dies. Other vampires get +1/+1. And when it does die, you bring it back as his coffin that sits there and makes little vampires with lifelink until 3 turns later, I believe it is. And when he gets 3 or more counters on him, then you can remove the counters and transform him back into Edgar. So, yeah.
And when he dies, he still gets the death trigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Henrika Dumnathi, she is another transformy one. She has flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to choose one that hasn't been chosen. So you're going to first choose one of these, and then the next, and then the next. So each player sacrifices a creature. That includes you. You draw a card, and you lose a life, and then transform her. And when you transform her, it's flying, death touch, and lifelink, and she's a 3/4, and you can pay 3, and each creature you control with flying, death touch, and or lifelink gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. So if you wanted to transform her right off the bat, you could just go ahead and do that. Then you don't have to do the other ones. It's up to you.
Then Kalida's Trader of Get. This is one of my favorite vampires. He is a 3/4 for 4 with lifelink, and if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead you exile that card, and you get to make a zombie to represent that dude on your side, and then you can pay 3 and sacrifice another vampire or zombie and put 2 1/1 counters on Kalida's Trader of Get.
Yeah. Yes, and we were thinking that you want to be able to take advantage of those death triggers, and sometimes you need a way to sacrifice. So that's one way. Also, Skull Clamp is another way to possibly do that. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards. So there's some ongoing draw, which will help out some of that draw that isn't there in that deck, as well as take advantage of some of your sacrifice triggers.
Yeah. Ashnod's Altar is similar idea, and again, to get you a little bit of ramp as well, you sacrifice a creature and add 2 colorless mana, so that will help you. Hopefully, and this is a good deck to put that in.
And then Shauna thought that another Planeswalker might be a good one. She loves to play with this guy, and I think you're playing with him in Standard or Historic right now on Arena.
So
Yeah,
you can do it.
Sorin Imperious Bloodlord for 3. He's a 4 loyalty planeswalker. You can +1 him. Target creature you control gains death touch and lifelink until the end of turn. If it's a vampire, you get to put a 1/1 counter on it, which is fantastic. You can also +1 him and sacrifice a vampire. When you do, Sorin Imperious Bloodlord deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. Very versatile. Or you can -3 him and put a vampire creature card from your hand onto the battlefield for free. So get that big creature that costs more than 4 mana out onto the battlefield for free.
Big 8 cost
Vampire Knight. Exactly. Some of those bigger creatures you can get out for free, but in the meantime, you can +1 him and get some other benefits.
Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear what you would do with these vampires. What vampires do you have up your sleeve to add to this deck? And that's it for next time. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime,
tap those magic cards and have fun doing it.
Bye, everyone.